Listen, I know a lot of people really like it and want it to be in every game, but I just don't like Gauntlet mode. It feels like the same stage no matter what the map is.
So I'm guessing we are just going to ignore that every new stage you play, these things can change. Dragon portals that may hinder or help you, treasure chests containing random rewards while also either hindering or helping you, different type of enemies and officers of many variations, sometimes different requests that require you to do certain tasks, miasma intensity, randomized reward you get from the stages, and how chaotic each stage will be. Heck, you can even modify the completed stages to be more random. I'm sure I can list more, but you get the point, and this stuff gets even more interesting and randomized as you play the much more difficult stages, including the red name stages. Not only that, each playthrough is going to be different due to the randomization.
So no, the stages are not the same and actually have variety, at least more than the typical Musu or free mode stages, including the dream ones, which again I don't see him complaining about.
You're just running around, activating portals and fighting off random waves of enemies.
I mean, that is a little oversimplified. You activate portals that may hinder or help you, get randomized rewards from chests that may help or hinder you, or other tasks to get better weapons and weapon stats. You can also have choices to stay longer in the stage for better rewards or higher risk due to the miasma system, which is a part of the risk versus reward system. You also use formations to your advantage in your battles and earn more as you go on. Again, I could list more, but you get the idea. Also, if the claim is that this is boring and repetitive, again, I don't see the same complaints for the free or Muzu modes, which are worse in their repetitiveness and boring factor than this game mode. The game modes, I guarantee you have had to play over and over again in some shape or form.
There's nothing special about the stages with the exception of what foot soldiers and officers you can run into and unlock. That's really about it.
1. You totally ignore that there are many other factors that I already listed that can make each stage different or special. 2. The enemies you fight do help make the stages more special, especially the more difficult enemy types, and are the formations you face on red name stages, and the more you progress to the higher levels, and especially the valuable rewards they yield. These more difficult enemies require you to think at least somewhat about your character movesets, formations, and all that jazz to determine how you want to get past them. 3. Didn't you state that there is nothing different or special about these stages, but then go out your way to list things that make these stages different or special?
Maybe I haven't dived deep enough into it, but if I need to go further than what I have, then it's already too late for you to try to earn my playtime.
You probably didn't, considering you see that every stage is apparently the same or not special. Heck, I'm not sure if you even touch the barrier stages that appears at every end of each section. While those are at least somewhat linear, they add some level of spice or speciality to the battle. For example, everything in the Hanoji barrier stage burns around you, and you have to fight your way out as your life is being drained by the fire, or attempt to defeat the officer who is causing that.
With the exception of that one DLC stage where you can grind out level ups like they're trying to get rid of them, I have no want to go back to this mode. It's kinda cool to take in a team of 5, but that's really it. Like, it's annoying how chests will randomly help you or hinder you by providing items, decreasing the miasma levels, increasing the miasma levels, making a group of officers appear, or even teleporting you to a random spot on the map.
Yes, that is because it is literally a major part of the risk versus reward system in Gauntlet mode. You can reap the rewards from the chest, but risk it screwing you over, like increasing miasma or alerting everybody to your position, forcing you to a potential big battle. Again, it's funny that he complains about the stages not being special and not having variety, but the chess system he complains about, which again has other randomization properties as I mentioned, is one of the things that help makes each stage special and not the same. At this point, man, just skip the chess and just use the formation skill that points you to the exit.
And the miasma levels itself is annoying as well. I'd rather have a hard time limit than have the enemies get so strong I can barely kill normal troops with someone who is level 1000.
First of all, again, not understanding the game mode. The miasma is crucial in giving the feeling of risk versus reward. The longer you stay, the better rewards you get, which you need to craft good stuff. However, your chances of dying increases due to your enemies getting stronger, who yield even better rewards at higher miasma. Again, it is not the game's fault you can't understand the game mode or bother to look up a guide that easily explains this. A time limit in replacement of the miasma system would also fully negate or nullify that risk versus reward concept. Also, the fact that you can't kill peons even at maxed or very high level tells me you either 1. Lack the knowledge of maximizing your character's movesets, 2. Using inferior weapon stats, 3. Using an inferior star weapon, 4. Using inferior items and not having enough item slots to further expand the amount of items you can use to help you, 5. You are not utilizing much of the formation skills to your advantage, or finally some or all of the above. This just seems to point to a skill issue at the end of the day.
I don't play Warriors games to die over and over again. I play them for the mindless action. Gauntlet mode just isn't fun for me.
It can become that if you take the time to get good. There are many people who take some time to know their character's movesets, certain superior weapons, and their stats, knowing which formation is superior, and knowing what items to use. Once you do all that and learn, it can become more mindless than you think. I also find it funny that in his Dynasty Warriors Origins review, he praises the overhauled combat system, a combat system that requires you to no longer to mindlessly mash buttons like previous Dynasty Warriors games. So do you play for the mindless action or no? Now we're going to see how he praises the Infinity mode in Warriors Orochi 4, which in my opinion is the inferior version of Gauntlet mode.
Infinite mode had a similar idea where it threw you into a map filled with officers for you to take out and hope for them to join your team. The end goal is to escape, gather materials for stronger weapons, and grind out those levels. The main difference is that instead of activating a multitude of portals all over the map in the hopes that one of them will lead you to the exit, you have various towers with different challenges to accomplish before you're even able to leave. This can range from racking up a kill count to purifying or destroying anchors to destroying pots all over the battlefield. You also can't see the whole map just like in Gauntlet mode, so you have to traverse the whole battlefield before you're able to find the anchors or pots you need to purify or destroy. You also don't see where the exit is until you've completed your task, so you may have to do some more running around before you're even able to locate the exit. There's also a time limit to complete these challenges. However, after you win the stage, the time limit is null. You can jump back in and grind to your heart's content. I know a lot of people were clamoring for Gauntlet mode, but this is leagues better.
First of all, these various towers are inferior to Gauntlet mode. First, enemy variety and amount is weak compared to Gauntlet mode, and are significantly more generic. Even worse, they aren't that mobile on the maps compared to Gauntlet mode. There is seriously nothing special about these officers when we compare them to the ones in Gauntlet mode, and the respawn frequency really is toned down for some reason. What's worse is that only a minority of the game's actual enemies are in this mode. Then the miasma system in here can be easily rid of and cheesed through, thus removing that risk versus reward feeling. Secondly, in terms of the challenges or tasks you can do, they either are equally bad, worst, or not that better than the ones in Gauntlet mode. These challenges are pretty generic, ranging from kill this or that and destroy this or that. In fact, a lot of the times, even on the higher end towers, these challenges repeat themselves verbatim. Also, you can cheese through these challenges with the OP combat system. Also, it doesn't help that the AI behavior and the flaws about these towers I listed makes your journey to complete these challenges and exit the level more dull and a cakewalk. You might as well just remove the time limit and it would make no difference. So essentially, his praises for the Infinity mode only centers around the various towers and challenges that either are worst off or really not that better than Gauntlet mode. To be honest, I think he only likes Infinity mode because he can grind for stuff and easily cheese through it without much thought. Also, I'm going to go back to his complaints about Gauntlet mode and explain how Infinity mode really fails to really fix any or much of the issues he complains about in his own words, excluding my critiques aside. For the same stage complaint, Infinity mode fails to improve on this either at all or really not that much. As I mentioned, the inferior enemy spawn frequency, variety, quantity, behavior, inferior miasma system, very generic challenges, and the increased linear layout of the stages do not really help the variety of the stages at all. In fact, I argue it is worse than Gauntlet mode. For the complaint you are just running around activating portals, fighting random waves of enemies, I really don't see how running around doing generic and at times repeating challenges, fighting less varied an amount of random waves of enemies is much better or better at all. Next, the complaint that Gauntlet mode fails to make the stages any special. Well, Infinity mode doesn't really make this concept really different or better by adding generic, at times repeating objectives, and makes it even worse with the flaws of how they handled the enemies as pointed out before. For the chess complaint, infinity mode no longer give you positive or negative effects, which I guess if you actually hate the risk versus reward concepts could be seen as an improvement. However, the fact that these chests are less in quantity per stage and that there are other better ways to grind out for valuable materials makes this either a downgrade or lackluster improvement. For example, you can just grind in the higher end towers repeatedly to get more valuable materials to craft while totally ignoring these chests. It seems that they really should have just removed the chest system, to be honest. In contrast, in my own experience in Gauntlet mode, the chests in combination with other methods were more useful due to their quantity, and varying chest variety made them worth seeking out in your quest to craft stuff. I also feel like I got more valuable items out of these chests than I did in Infinity mode, likely due to the quantity of these chests per stage. Moving on to the miasma complaint, I find it weird that he talks about the time limit, something he apparently wanted in Gauntlet mode, but fails to mention the miasma system he hates that exists to a lesser extent in this game mode in the Sky Towers, which makes me believe that, just like Gauntlet mode, he didn't really dive deep into this. But even then though, the miasma levels are significantly nerfed here in my honest opinion anyway. It is also easier from what I have seen to get rid of the miasma system in the game mode, and you can cheese through officers mindlessly without thought due to the combat system even on higher miasma levels in comparison to Gauntlet mode. While yes, in Gauntlet mode you can also mindlessly cheese through officers, but only after you maximize the officers' movesets, weapons, formations, and all that good stuff, and you still at least have some level of vulnerability in Gauntlet, especially against tougher enemies. In terms of the mindless action, I mean, with the things Infinity mode has nerfed, it is no shock that if you actually hate getting good or hate the risk versus reward system that was superior in Gauntlet mode, then yeah, I guess this can be seen as an improvement at the cost of, well, everything else around it. So again, at best, Infinity mode improved the casual play while dulling the game mode down even further, making it more boring and dull, or really not improving much at all. So at the end of the day, I think Chris's critique of Gauntlet mode was really unfounded due to the lack of misunderstanding of the game mode skill issue, and his praises of Infinity mode really being downgrades or improvements that really do not make the game mode really that much better than Gauntlet mode, especially when it sacrifices other elements that made Gauntlet mode special or great. If Chris or his fans wants to respond to this or discuss this with me, feel free to @ me in the response or talk to me directly.
And that's about it. See ya.